I'm Elaine Kasket, psychologist and author of All the Ghosts in the Machine, the digital afterlife of your personal data. And I'm going to talk about why everyone needs to prepare for their digital afterlife. Digital afterlives are the zeros and ones we leave behind when we die. They might be called digital footprints, digital legacies, digital assets, or digital remains. And they're not just made up of social media posts. Even if you hate Facebook, you're indifferent to Twitter, and you're clueless about Instagram, you're still leaving behind a breadcrumb trail of digital detritus throughout your life that doesn't just disappear when you die. And this isn't like Hansel and Gretel's deliberate breadcrumb trail. This is the trail that you create unintentionally, incidentally, as you wander through the deep, wide forest of modern digital life. What are some of the breadcrumbs that you drop as you go? I'll tell you about 3. Breadcrumb 1, your emails and private messages. In 2004, an American soldier was killed in Iraq. His email providers, T&Cs, stipulated deletion of account contents upon death, but the soldier's father took the provider to court, saying he needed some specific information for the estate. Yahoo didn't go down without a fight, but the father ended up getting what he wanted: 3 boxes and 10,000 pages of material on a CD. Everything was there, a comprehensive collection of correspondence between his deceased son and loads of people that the father had never heard of, many of them presumably still living users. These users had every right to expect privacy from the email provider that they'd also signed up to, but nevertheless, this bereaved father was now free to read their complete email history with his late son. Perhaps you feel comfortable giving a trusted person carte blanche access to all of your correspondence. Perhaps you don't. But one thing's certain, it's not only your privacy at stake, but the privacy of everyone you communicated with. Another kind of breadcrumb: if you use the internet, you generally leave behind search histories. In 2006, a data leak resulted in the publication of the search histories of 650,000 AOL users. And despite these search strings being anonymized, the New York Times was able to identify several individuals. A couple of years later, a couple of filmmakers created I Love Alaska, a series of mini-movies based upon one person's search history. Perhaps it's difficult to imagine why a search history could provide a significantly compelling narrative to form the basis of a film, but give it a chance. Searcher 711391 was a middle-aged married woman from Texas. Friday: how to make good impression meeting an online friend. Saturday: what is a womanizer? Can you use prepaid phone cards on cell phones? Sunday: how to get rid of nervousness meeting a blind date. How can you tell if someone online is lying? Monday: symptoms of heart attack, trapped gas in chest, never admit to an extramarital affair. If it had been her grieving husband that had seen her search history after her death, what might he have realized about his late wife that he didn't know before? And if your loved ones had access to every search you'd ever made, what would they learn about you? A final kind of breadcrumb I'll mention is your location data. The location settings on our phones and wearable devices have the capacity, if they're enabled or not disabled, to track everywhere we've ever been, and those data are easily combined with other digitally captured time and date stamped data. In situations where the relationship was troubled or where the death was complicated or mysterious, a bereaved person's hunt for answers to persistent questions can potentially send them into a spiral of compulsive digital detective work. Has there ever been a time when you weren't where you said you were? Maybe it was entirely innocent, maybe it wasn't, but what might it be like for someone you love to be wrestling with that question after you're gone? So whether you're on social media or not, your digital being is more comprehensive than you think. What do I mean by digital being? As a psychologist, I think in terms of external behavior and internal behavior. External behavior is anything you could be filmed doing: typing out a message on your phone, posting something on Facebook, writing an email, performing a search, giving a talk. This is the being of body. Internal behavior includes your thoughts and your feelings. It's inside the skin, the being of mind. It's not socially performative. On its own, it's invisible to others. But our digital being is somewhere in between. It shows a mixture of the external and the internal. And taken in aggregate, our digital remains are often more like digital beings than mere digital footprints because they're capable of capturing the inner workings of the mind, the struggles of the heart, the dark night of the soul. And that's why digital remains can be so meaningful. They can show you the person you knew, and they can show you the person you didn't. Maybe you're wondering whether it's healthy to continue to visit someone's social media profiles after they're dead. Maybe you're wondering if it's a problem. But remember this, forget what you've heard about the stages of grief. Grief is different for everyone, and we're not doing ourselves any favors when we try to analyze whether we're mourning in the right way. Across cultures and millennia, human beings have continued bonds with the dead. Your relationship with a person changes when they die, but it doesn't end. And just as every relationship is unique, so is each bereavement. There are many forms of continuing bonds, and we humans have always used the communication technologies of the day to try and contact the dead. When the telegraph tapped, the spirits rapped. And when photography came around, so did spook pictures. Thomas Edison hoped that the phonograph would be able to capture the voices of the dead from the Great War. Now, it can be much easier to continue bonds because the dead, or at least their persistent digital beings, live in the tech already. We may be able to access quite a lot of information about the deceased, for good or ill. Particularly in the immediate period after death, people often experience a searching and calling reflex, looking for the dead in the same places and spaces where they were last seen. These days, those places are often online. If you search for the dead online soon after they're gone, you'll find them. The online space is meaningful to and practical for the living as both a home for and a conduit to their dead. But the online dead need caretakers. The word legacy comes from the medieval Latin word legatus, someone who's appointed, someone who's delegated. Who's delegated to look after the digitally persistent dead, their next of kin, the representatives of their estates or their executors? Or when we sign up to a platform or service, are we simultaneously engaging that company to manage our personal data when we're dead? We don't mean to do that, but is that, by default, what is happening? When most of our information and memorabilia are digitally stored, bereaved families have issues with access and issues with control. The family used to have privileged access to the effects of the deceased, but the social networking era is the era of the friend. Friends used to be disenfranchised mourners, the outer circle of the bereaved, but friends may now have more access to the deceased person's words and images than family members. It's also the age of corporate control of our information. Imagine that you lost someone extremely important to you, and that the entire record of your long-time relationship was contained in a physical shoebox. A shoebox full of photos, notes, letters, and other ephemera. After their death, you keep this shoebox by your bed, where you can go through it whenever you want, whenever you need to feel a connection with the person that you lost. One day, some months after the death, there's a knock at your door. You open it, and you're met with a stranger on your doorstep. This person silently brushes past you into your home, walks down the corridor and into your bedroom. They grab your shoebox and leave. Your entire record of their relationship with this person is abruptly gone. It's like a second death. Eventually, you identify who this person was, but your pleas for the return of your precious memorabilia fall on deaf ears. The shoebox was never really yours to begin with, you're told. If this were a real shoebox in your actual house, several crimes would have been committed here. But when your memories are entrusted to big tech, this can easily happen. Your shoebox of memories can disappear, and it will all be perfectly legal. Bereaved people can sometimes encounter emotional difficulties because they can access too much digitally stored information about their loved ones, and sometimes there are issues with having too little. Facebook is a significant steward of deceased people's data. There are such things as digital legacy services, which are designed for the express purposes of preservation of memories and memorialization of the dead, but these come and go, and they're minnows next to the gigantic blue whale of a platform that never set out to be a digital cemetery in the first place. Researchers at the Oxford Internet Institute have calculated that Facebook could host the digital remains of 4.9 billion people by the end of the century. Facebook recognizes that digital remains on its site are extremely important to many mourners. A while back, I talked to one of the main forces behind memorialization at Facebook, who compared Facebook's role to that of a funeral director. Who would have predicted that Facebook would come to see itself as the funeral director of our online digital remains? But technology companies' control over our personal data often doesn't lessen when we die. It increases. They can decide how we will be remembered online and by whom. Believe it or not, a large percentage of the services we use don't have anything in their terms and conditions about what happens to our data when we die. In most places, the law has yet to keep up with technology. So, for now, it's largely up to you. What can you do to prepare for your digital afterlife? Confront your death anxiety. Facing up to your eventual demise can be a struggle, understandably. Death is the great mystery, the ultimate loss of control, the unfathomable snuffing out of the conscious existence you've always known. And you may tend to avoid the things that make you anxious, but avoidance can maintain and fuel anxiety. Take a deep breath and look your finitude square in the face, and you may find that you can bend this awareness to your advantage. Occasionally remind yourself that each time you use a connected device, you may be laying down another brick on your eventual digital monument, writing another paragraph in a digital autobiography that will outlive you. If you see digital activity as not just the stuff of life, but as the stuff of legacy, you'll probably make smarter decisions. If you died tomorrow, would you be content with what's left behind? Would you be happy with the words that hover in the ether, with the image that lingers in your digital reflection? If not, what do you want to do differently, online and off? Always assess, never assume. This rule applies whether you're planning for your own digital legacy or managing someone else's. Remember that what was true in the pre-digital era may not and often does not apply in digital contexts. For all of the online accounts that matter to you, look for the terms and conditions that explain what happens to your data when you die. If you can't find any, inquire. Maybe your questions will spark some change where it's much needed. Get education and advice and guidance from online organizations that educate the public about digital legacy. In the UK, the Digital Legacy Association is one of these. And if you're choosing a probate specialist, try to find one who's knowledgeable about digital legacy and digital assets. Put yourself in other people's shoes. If you're logged on to, or managing, or even actively operating a deceased person's phone, social media accounts, blog, message apps, or email accounts, it's very important to realize that any activity from within these accounts can result in voice from beyond the grave phenomena for others. You'll also be accessing data associated with still living persons, which might certainly concern them and which, on reflection, might also concern you. Maybe you don't care what happens after you die, so you don't concern yourself with your digital remains. Maybe you want your online presence deleted after you draw your last breath, and that's your prerogative. Before you make any decisions, though, see it from the other person's perspective. If someone dear to you had a rich online presence, replete with photos, videos, and other memorabilia, a digital shoebox of memories, would it bother you if all that material disappeared after their death? Let that sink in, really sink in, and you may suddenly feel less devil-may-care about your own digital legacy. Using your imagination only takes you so far, so you may be making erroneous assumptions about how others would feel. And that brings us to the fourth tip. Have conversations about death and the digital. Talk about it. Talk about it because it's an intellectually interesting topic, by all means, but don't keep it in the abstract. Meaningfully apply it to your own life. Speak to the people you love about how you feel about your digital material, about your personal take on privacy and ownership of data in the digital era. Talk about what you'd like to happen with your data when you're no longer here, if you can control it. Ask them about their thoughts and preferences regarding their own digital information. If your friend or family member says she wants all of her social media deleted on death and she's planning on instructing legacy contact settings to that effect, and if you think it would break your heart to lose it, tell her so, while also trying to understand where she's coming from. If she sticks to her guns, think about how you might preserve anything that's precious to you. If it's important to you to have your Facebook profile memorialized or your blog maintained for posterity, make that clear to your next of kin who may otherwise have had no idea. If you're not sure how you feel, talking it through with others will probably clarify your position. Now, furthermore, don't just have conversations about it in the social or the family realm. Think about your workplace if you have one. Does your employer control or process the data of employees? Clients, users, customers? Probably yes. Could any of that information be of practical or financial or sentimental value to anyone else if the persons associated with the data were to die? Probably yes. Does your organization have well-articulated policies and procedures around what to do with the data of the deceased, or clear guidance and training on how to respond to bereaved family members? The answers to those questions might very well be no, because we still have a long way to go in this area. Lead the change by speaking up. Make a digital era will. First, buck the trend by making a will in the first place, and then flout convention even further by explicitly recording your wishes, preferences, hopes for digitally stored material. Ironically, this thoroughly modern last will and testament may need to be on paper, signed in ink, and officially witnessed because not all jurisdictions recognize digitally generated and stored wills, so check the law in your area. But even if digital things aren't legally executable where you live, it never hurts to be clear about what you'd like or what you'd want. For example, I would like my mother to use money from my estate to keep up payments on my blog, for example, or I want my Facebook profile to be memorialized. In the absence of a clear steer from you, your loved ones and the corporations that manage your data will make inferences or just follow T's and C's and potentially argue amongst themselves about what you really would have wanted. And maybe they'll get that right, maybe they won't. On every account that allows you to do so, nominate a kind of digital executor, which is legacy contact on Facebook and inactive account manager on Google. And remember, lots of platforms, if not most platforms, still don't have terms and conditions governing what happens to your data when you die. But if you nominate a kind of digital executor, make sure you've discussed that with the person first. Again, it might not hold legal weight where you live yet, but all of this is far better than giving no indication at all of your desires. Repeat yourself in your official will or in a letter kept with your official will, remembering, though, that you can't bequeath what you don't own. You don't own a lot of the stuff that you keep on third-party providers' platforms, and you might not be allowed to transfer control of your account or certainly give access to its contents to another individual. It's usually a one account, one user, cannot access except by the user situation. So manage your expectations by always checking those T's and C's. Don't rely on passwords. Assume that if an account or device is password protected, it likely won't be accessible after your death. Apple or Facebook or Amazon will not give people other than the account holder access. Password protecting your devices, accounts, and apps is absolutely necessary to maintain your data security and privacy in life and we're encouraged to change them frequently or when there's been a breach. After a death, these eminently sensible safeguards can become a nightmare for those who need to settle your estate or access personal memorabilia. Even though in many jurisdictions this hack is illegal or the contracts forbid it, some folks have tried to plan ahead by providing another person or persons with passwords to their devices or accounts. If someone allows you, in case of death or emergency, access to their devices and their account passwords, don't abuse their trust by snooping. For the sake of whatever relationship you have, be clear between yourselves about the circumstances under which it's permissible to access the other person's private data. But remember that account passwords will have a shelf life, and terms and conditions might stipulate account deletion, memorialization, or some other type of login lockdown upon the confirmed death of the original account holder. Now, if you have skeletons in your digital closet that you suspect would cause confusion, feelings of betrayal, or additional pain to people you care about, be careful about granting those individuals carte blanche access. If you are unwilling to confess and address any lurking secrets while you're still alive, you might wish to embark on a deleting frenzy, let the passwords die with you, or otherwise ensure that the closet door remains shut when you're no longer able to guard it. In some circumstances, including ones where you won't be around to pick up the pieces, there's an argument for allowing your dear ones to remain blissful in their ignorance. Be an unapologetic curator. Imagine inheriting the laptop or other storage devices of someone who took a lot of photographs. Naturally, because of the ubiquity of in-phone cameras, this describes a lot of people. You'd be confronted with thousands of images. Beyond those files, there might be thousands of other types of files, documents, emails, text messages, most of them without any context or comment to indicate what's meaningful or important and what's not. Many bereaved people find themselves so staggered by the huge, undifferentiated mass of a loved one's digital stuff that they can't see the wood for the trees and avoid engaging with it. An ardent genealogist of today may go into raptures when they discover a single photograph of their great-great-great-grandfather from a time when photographic images were rare rather than abundant. If all of today's digitally stored data do manage to be persistent and accessible over the next centuries, amateur genealogists will find a once challenging hobby about as exciting as shooting fish in a barrel. But when it comes to our digital information, most of us are hoarders. Clean your digital house frequently and be careful about how much you store in the first place. This tip is for when you are bereaved rather than when you're preparing for your own digital afterlife. Accessing more doesn't always equate to feeling better. In grief, it is common to search for the lost loved one and to hungrily fall upon anything associated with them, particularly perhaps in the case of difficult deaths that were unexpected or traumatic, or that involved suicide, homicide, or mystery. This searching can assume the form of combing through the deceased's data in a relentless quest for answers, comfort, and resolution. I'm sure that in some circumstances, going through private correspondence can be helpful to some mourners. Sometimes, however, the searcher will encounter material that's frustratingly ambiguous or that only provokes more questions. The dead person is no longer there to answer unsettling questions, to resolve ambiguities, or to provide important context, or perhaps to apologize and seek resolution or healing. This is one of the aspects of the information age that can make grief particularly harrowing. When you delve into a deceased loved one's digital data, you could be opening a precious gift or a Pandora's box. Which one it will be is impossible to tell ahead of time, so be careful. Back to preparing for your own digital afterlife. Go old school. Papyrus scrolls from ancient Egypt are still with us, but our digitally stored information may be non-existent, inaccessible, and or unreadable in a few years, decades, or centuries' time, much less millennia. We just don't know. What we can say with comparative certainty, though, is that paper and other material objects might be vulnerable to the elements, but they won't fall victim to technological obsolescence. Even if you have confidence that your digital data will stick around a good long while, and even if you think you've ensured that others will be able to access it, things change. Technology evolves and obsolesces in predictably unpredictable ways. Given that, it's worth selectively transforming digital stuff into material stuff now and again. Make the occasional photo book of the images that you love the most or that commemorate special and meaningful occasions. Print out the electronic correspondence that's closest to your heart. Transcribe a passage of your online writing into a beautiful notebook that goes on a physical shelf. If you never get around to any of that, though, don't despair. The digital world hasn't destroyed your ability to connect with your loved ones and your ancestors in the same ways people always have. My memories of my grandparents are triggered by photographs and letters, but they may also bubble up when I see or touch or use a certain ring or an old button in the sewing box or a dog-eared and yellowing recipe card giving instructions for chocolate chip cookies. These things are reinforced and expanded in the mutual sharing of recollections with others who knew them. And I hold their stories in my heart and mind, and I pass them on to the next generation. The more things change, the more they stay the same. The paperback edition of my book, All the Ghosts in the Machine, came out in 2020. It's less of a planning tool and more of a general exploration of life, death, relationships, privacy, and the power of big tech in the digital era. It's written with the general reader in mind and obviously has lots more information about this area. You can see more of my writing and access podcasts where I've been a host or a guest on ElaineKasket.com. And you can follow my work on Twitter and Medium at Elaine Kasket. Thanks for listening.